Hey there everybody, this is Vic Moss from the Drone Service Providers Alliance, DSPA, and I want to put this video out to talk about a very critical issue right now in Washington, D.C. First, a little bit about DSPA. We are the only national advocacy group for commercial drone pilots in the United States. We have a little over 34,000 members, and then also through different affiliations we have with some different companies and different organizations. We represent about 100,000 drone pilots here in the United States. So I'm hoping a lot of this gets out to you, and I'm hoping you share it. And I'm not looking for clicks, I'm not looking for views. I just want to make sure that people see this and hear this and understand the critical importance of what we need to do in DC right now. First, a little background. We had the 2025 the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. Sorry, too many acts I'm following right now. And it had what was called Section 1709, which requires an audit of DJI, Autel, and any associated drone companies with them in order to provide comfort, I think is probably a good way to put it, with Congress. So we're not really pushing this national security narrative that honestly I believe is a false narrative pushed out by let's just say U.S. drone companies and an organization that supports them. So what we need to do is make sure that audit happens. But honestly, it's kind of too late for that. If the audit does not happen by December 23rd of this year, 2025, then DJI, Autel, and all the associated drone companies of theirs basically get put on the FCC entity list, which means no more new FCC licenses will be allowed. So any new drone that comes out, or maybe even mics like I've got here, gimbals, anything that has an FCC license by one of those companies will no longer allowed to get new licenses. Let's put it that way. So any new models that come out, anything like that, will not be allowed to have an FCC license, which then means cannot operate legally in the United States. And then last month in October, the FCC leadership also voted themselves the authority, I'm not quite sure how that works, but they did, the authority to retroactively revoke current licenses. So that's only for things on the current FCC entity list, and so DJI is not on that at this point. Neither is Autel, neither is Anzu, neither is all the other drones made under agreement or license from DJI and Autel. But if it does go on the list on the 23rd of December, then it could be retroactively revoked. So something we really need to push out this narrative that it's really, really critically important that this gets done. So since there's really not time, it's November 6th at the moment, and there's no way really, even if it started today, and since the government's shut down right now, obviously it wouldn't, that it could get done in time. And so then that dead man break, or whatever you want to call it, goes into effect on the December 23rd, and it would be devastating, and that's not even putting it lightly. It would be devastating for this industry if FCC does this and DJI, Autel, and all the associated brands are not allowed to be introducing new product into the United States. And then obviously if it's revoked, then it's a death nail for this industry, and I'm not putting that too lightly. The reasons behind me saying that are our drones, let's just talk about drones right now, not worry about anything else, basically are not really made to last a long time. Like all tech, it's not a drone thing, it's a tech thing. Any new tech really is not designed to last a very long time. We do not have serviceable parts, I think is a good way to put it, in our drones. And even if we do have an issue, we can't get new parts in to fix it. So at some point, their drones are no longer safe to be in the air, and people like myself and others like me would then not put them in the air, and then we would lose a very large part of our business. But others who really maybe don't care about safety, don't understand aircraft safety, don't understand the NAS safety, may go ahead and put their drones in the air. And so then we have an issue with possibility of drones failing. And the older they are, the more hours they have, the longer they've been in service, the more likely they are to fail. So we need to turn over our fleets frequently. And if we can't do that, it becomes not only a safety issue, but also it will devastate small businesses here in the United States. And first responders as well. I mean, over 90% of the first responder fleets all use DJI and Autel. And if the FCC says you can't have anything new, then obviously as their fleets age out, they won't have anything to replace this with. There are some American drone products that are semi-capable. I won't mention any names, but if you know me, you know who I'm talking about. And they are not as capable as DJI drones. They are not as economically viable as DJI drones, and they just don't have the same ability to do the job at hand when it comes to first responder fleets. And if you take the best tool out of the hands of those who need it to save American lives, then you are risking American lives. There's no real easy way to sugarcoat that. The FCC, if this happens, will put American lives at risk. If American manufacturers or the organization that supports them and push these bans through, they'll be responsible for American lives that are lost and or damaged, including first responder lives, because we see a lot of drone use over fire, say, and but a big smoky fire, you can't see the flame, so an incident commander puts an infrared drone up, and they can tell where their firefighters can and cannot go, where their rescue personnel can and cannot go. So not only are they putting the general public at risk, they're also putting firefighters and other first responders at risk as well. SWAT teams, same thing. So we need to do something about it. So what we need you to do is we need you to reach out to the conference committee, Senate and House Conference Committee, because what we need to do is we need an extension. We need an extension put into the 2026, fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act. Currently, both the House and the Senate have passed their version. Obviously, versions are different, so it goes to conference committee, and those conference committees are currently, again, on November 6th, working out what they need to do to hammer out the differences, send them back to the right chambers and vote on it and get it passed and get it sent to the president for a signature. This needs to happen this year. Last year it did happen on December 23rd, and which is why we have the December 23rd, 2026 deadline. December 25 deadline, sorry. And we need to be expedient in what we do here. So once you see this, once you have a chance to sit down or make a chance to sit down and reach out to the legislators that are responsible for this conference committee right now, we really need to make sure that they put an extension in. And the committees you need to reach out to are the Armed Services Committee on both the House and the Senate. I will have some links below to different documents that'll help you find out who to send these to, so follow those. But it needs to go to the House and the Senate. Armed Services Committee and also the Department of Commerce is responsible for some of this as well. So I'll have a number of email addresses and things like that, or links to documents with email addresses and things like that, to where you can send that in. And instead of putting out a template for you to use, because templates don't work. If everybody says the same thing the same way, it's not really an effective way to reach out. So we need to make sure that we're all doing something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some bullet points to use in crafting your email to the legislators. Again, we've got that critical deadline of December 23rd of 2025. It's just 6 weeks away at this point, so it's got to get done very, very quickly. We don't know when the conference committee is going to be done with their suggestion for the Armed Services Committees to go ahead and get the NDAA back to the houses for votes and obviously off to the president, so it needs to be done fairly quickly. But a little bit about what would happen, and again, use these bullet points to craft your letter, your email, your phone call to the appropriate offices. First of all, if this audit doesn't happen, thousands of companies that rely on drones for their livelihood will eventually go out of business. As I mentioned, we don't have replaceable drones at this point for the vast, I'm going to guess over 90% of the drone pilots out there, drones out there used by companies. We don't have the Avatas, we don't have the Evos, we don't have the Matrice, we don't have the Mavics and the Airs and the Minis and all that. Nobody makes anything that replaces those drones, and that's what the vast majority of drone pilots use in their company. So we're going to go out of business 2 or 3 years if there's nothing we can replace these with, because we must, as I mentioned earlier, we must replace our fleets due to safety reasons. Small and large businesses both use these drones, these tools for our businesses. As of November 1st of this year, 2025, 481,760 people have taken and passed the remote pilot test. So there are that many people who currently possess a remote pilot certificate. And let's say half of them are still in business. That's, it's kind of a guess, but I think it might be a fairly accurate guess given, anecdotal evidence that I see in my forums and things like that. That's almost 250,000 people that rely on these things. For 250,000 companies, so it could even be more people than just that company. And that many people, that many companies rely on these drones. And again, so they'll be going out of business. And that's just not, it's so anti-American, I can't even tell you how bad it is. Small businesses run this company. They're the backbone of this country. They're the backbone of this country. And we won't be able to do what we need to do. And again, with first responders are a whole other world. You've got LEDA and you've got drone responders, you've got people like that are putting similar stuff out like this. And I just want to concentrate on the businesses. Recreational is another thing I'm not going to concentrate on. There's more recreational pilots or recreational flyers than there are commercial pilots. And most of them use DJI as well. Almost all of them use Chinese, whether it's DJI, Autel, or one of the other companies. And so that's going to affect that as well. So if this happens, this is economic suicide for what is predicted to be a $50 to $55 billion industry by 2023, or 2030. I'm sorry, it's not that far away. So that's terrible. U.S. manufacturers are trying to catch up. They are. There are some out there that put out a good product. But the leading one right now just recently put out a press release like, hey, we're doing 1,000 units a month, which is great for them. But they're only enterprise units. It's only one model as well. And it's not a great model to begin with. It's better than the others that has been, and other companies or some companies and first responders are using them. Some because they have to by law, which is stupid. But again, there's nobody making these Mavics and these Airs and these Inspires and these Minis and these Evos and these Matrice. Nobody's making these, so we don't have anything U.S. or otherwise to replace our fleets with. But they're trying to catch up. U.S. is trying to catch up. But for us to think that we'll be able to replace 2 million, 3 million drones in 3 years is a folly. It's ignorant at best, ignorant at worst. Actually, it's ignorant at best. If we did that, we don't have any way to replace it. We don't have the manufacturing. We don't have the chipsets. We don't have models being made. So again, this is economic suicide for my industry if this passes. Let's say, I would say most drones that we use, commercial drone pilots and companies that use commercial drones, are under $5,000. There's some of the larger ones, obviously, but most of them are going to be under $5,000. Nobody makes it. Nobody makes a replacement for that at any cost, by the way. We're not talking about economic viability here. We're talking about just nobody makes it and nobody's interested. Let's get back to the numbers here for just a minute. If 250,000 drone companies have to replace their entire fleets in 3 years, which I think is a reasonable guesstimation about how long, I replace mine probably every 2 years, just simply because of the hours I put on them and the new models that come out. If 250,000 companies have to replace their drone in 3 years, and let's say every company has 4 drones, which I think is a gross misunderstatement. Personally, I have 11. I know companies that have 30, 40, 50, 100, 300. That's a million drones by 2023, by 2028 that we need to see on the market, and that's just not going to happen in the United States, as I mentioned earlier. The company that puts out 1,000, let's say they triple their output. That's 3,000 a month, 36,000 a year. That's less than 4% of the need. And there's no way to make up that other 96%. So again, you're talking economic suicide if this goes through, and you're talking basically safety. Not only safety of the airspace, but safety of first responders, safety of people who are lost. The first responders use their drones to find and things like that. So it's just absolutely ludicrous to assume or even to even think that this is doable. I won't use the words I want to use in this video because it's just not my style, but it's asinine that anybody with any congressional person or any bureaucrat or any advocate for the American drone industry, manufacturing industry, would want to put a ban on what we use. It's arrogant. It's Well, let's just leave it at that. And I don't want to go down that rabbit trail too terribly far. But what people are telling Congress are either ignorant, either the pejorative sense of ignorant or the non-pejorative sense of ignorant. If you don't know, you don't know, then it's still ignorance. But if you know and you're still doing it, that's out of ignorance, or just flat out lies. I've seen lies come out of the face of people in this industry that testify regularly at Congress, and I won't mention names. There's a certain person in charge of an agency in D.C. that has lied in the past, saying that DJI drones can read your heartbeat or use facial recognition software, which is complete BS, bovine scat, if you want to use that particular language. And he knows it, and that one of his underlings used his words in Congress, and it's crap. It's a lie because they know it's not true. And so a misinformation is different than a lie, and that's a lie. So I'm going down a rabbit trail. I said I wasn't going to, but now I want to. Basically, let's get back to what we're talking about here. We need to reach out to Congress, and we need to reach out to the Senate and the House Armed Services Committee, and we also need to reach out to the Commerce Committee, who is the one very likely making up the compromise that needs to go back. So, are drones a security risk in the United States? That's what 1709 is supposed to find out, right? These Chinese drones, are they a security risk? When this was put into the bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 1709 again, that was a compromise, almost a last-minute compromise from what I understand. There was no agency assigned. It was a security agency, and then there's a list of security agencies in the federal government that could have done it. But nobody was assigned to do it. No specific agency was assigned to do it. So I think, personally, that DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is probably the agency that needs to do that. So the compromise or the extension must name an agency to do that, and they must give them the deadline to do it. Again, DHS is probably the best thing to do that. And not only does that need to get done, it needs to be an open process. Now, obviously, we don't need to know how they do what they do, obviously, because there are some things that they do that, the general public doesn't need to know. When they're doing their audit, there are ways they do it that, that are probably classified and should be probably classified. But things that are found need to be addressable. An audit is by design to find issues. And so anybody with a brain is going to understand that an audit will find issues with this gear. But what needs to happen is those issues need to be presented to the manufacturer and say, hey, you know what, this is what we found. What can you do about it? And then the audit needs to be performed, let's say, every 12 months, 18 months, whatever like that. So that needs to keep going. The claims that we see from those in charge, let's say Congress, bureaucrats, things like that, when we ask for proof, we say it's classified. And my stance has been and always will be, and if you know anything about me at all, you've heard me say it before, that's unacceptable. We have Washington, D.C., I like to use the phrase leaks like a submarine screen door. And if this was an issue, if this was a provable issue, those who are so anti-China drone, and you know who you are, we know who you are, they would have leaked it. I'm sorry, it would have been leaked to Politico, it would have been leaked to the Washington Post, it would have been leaked to somebody who carries your water. And so we know for a fact then, or at least I think it's safe to assume for a fact, that none of this stuff is truly a national security issue. Do these drones send data back? Well, more than likely, but so do our phones. So does a Samsung refrigerator. Lots of stuff sends things back. But what is that data that's being sent back? It's not high-resolution imagery. I can promise you that. As a photographer, videographer myself, I know what it takes to upload data. I upload gigabytes every month, and I know what it is. And I use fiber, so I move my stuff pretty quickly. And our drones are not connected to the internet when they fly. And so we can't do it while we're in the air. So again, is the radio signal interceptable? Sure. So is Skydio, so is Brink, so is every other drone out there. So are our phones. Everything out there is interceptable. So what do we need to do? We need to put safeguards in place, air gap them if at all possible, and then go ahead and put those safety features in place, and then that's not an issue. Maybe We want to make sure that we're using U.S. safety, U.S.-based software security protocols, answers, programs, whatever, when something's flying near critical infrastructure. That's probably not a bad idea. Actually, that's a pretty damn good idea. But it can't be a country of origin issue. It's got to be a drone issue or a phone issue or a GoPro issue. I mean, whatever, something that has that ability to transmit. There has to be some kind of safety precaution in place if you're going to fly near critical infrastructure. And speaking of critical infrastructure, Section 2209 of the, let me see which one it was, 2209 of the 2016 FAA Extension Act. That's 9 years ago, folks. That's supposed to be out there, and that's supposed to have a list of places that are critical infrastructure in the air, so airspace critical infrastructure. And that was supposed to be out 180 days after it was passed. So we're 8 years, 9 years. 9 years late for something that's supposed to be a security issue, which we'll get to in a minute. But there was a presidential proclamation, not proclamation, I apologize, an executive order that says that's supposed to be out. The government shutdown obviously slowed that down a little bit. So any type of suggestion about having a US-based software security protocol, I mean, whatever you want to call it, has to be tied to these critical infrastructure. Okay, it can't just be this blanket, I'm going to put my Mavic 3 Enterprise up to fly over a bunch of stockpiles in a mine and measure how many rocks there are. It's asinine to require security, something like that. I mean, it's stupid. Who cares how many rocks there are in a mine, other than the mine company? So, in situations like that, or recreationally, man, it's stupid. Recreational people don't need to do that. If I'm flying, I live in Colorado. I'm flying, beautiful up in the mountains of Colorado. I don't need security protocols. I just need to fly and have fun and take beautiful pictures and photographs, or videos. So there needs to be some guidelines and some guardrails about when that security software is required. So that needs to be done. Back to the issue that we haven't seen any proof that this is an actual issue. We've actually seen proof that it isn't. There have been audits by private companies. There have been audits by federal agencies that say this is not an issue. There is no secure data being sent back. So again, it gets back to, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? Why is this an issue? And if this was an issue, why are we still talking about it? If this is such a major issue, there should have been an executive order. There should have been a law passed. There should have been something done at some point that said, shut them down. It's a security issue. If it's a security issue, that's what should have been done. But the fact that it's become a political issue just, again, proves that it's not. You've got legislators are saying, boo China, which, hey, I get it. China and the United States aren't necessarily friends. President Trump did have a nice conversation with President Xi. So there's that economically. But the fact that we're adversaries, let's say that the governments themselves are adversaries, doesn't mean the companies are, right? So the people definitely aren't necessarily. So what we're seeing is the anti-China sentiment in DC right now being combined with the anti-drone sentiment and being combined with the fact that the United States cannot compete and won't be able to compete for a very long time with manufacturing capabilities of China, regardless of the product being manufactured. We cannot compete. That's our own damn fault. I'm going to ramble here. I apologize. You want to click out here, But this is our own fault. We as a country, the United States, we started offshoring R&D, manufacturing, tech support, basically in the early 70s, some say the late 60s, but the early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, whatever. And then it really went into high gear in late 80s, early 90s. And so we saw the economic benefit, short-sighted economic benefit, obviously, of making our products offshore, having our tech support offshore, having our R&D offshore. And for someone in Congress or a UAS support organization, American organization, to say we need to make these now is a fool's errand. And it's also, again, ignorant. So I'll call, and again, a pejorative ignorance, that they think they can do this. We don't have it. So it's become a political issue rather than a security issue. And again, simple fact that we haven't gone ahead and outlawed these, banned these, taken these out of the sky is really, in my mind, proof enough that this is not really a security issue. It's a potential security issue, sure, as is anything, really, that collects data. You know, how many Chinese chips are in fax machines and modems on the Hill? That's what I'd like to know. But again, there's safety protocols in place, obviously, for things like that. So that should then be able to, you know, transmit over to the drone world. And it's not that hard to do. And I'm not a security expert. I know that, but I know people who are, and they have told me that. It's like, this is not that hard to do. This is not that hard to fix. Nobody wants to, though, because nobody wants to be friendly to a Chinese company. Nobody wants to be seen as anti-American manufacturing. And by the way, none of us are. I'm not. I would love to fly an American drone. I have an American drone in my fleet because I have to have one. It's dangerous to fly, honestly, if there's any wind, and it does not provide the data I can with my DJI gear. But we would love to be able to fly with one. We really would. And so for us to really think that this is an issue that we can fix overnight or in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or probably even 10 years is a joke. And anybody who thinks otherwise, well, I won't say that, but any legislator that thinks otherwise or believes otherwise is listening to the wrong people. They're listening to the people who have an economic stake in the outcome of this rather than an R&D stake. They need to be able to innovate, and since they can't, they legislate. So instead of trying to kill an industry, and I'm not being overly, I mean that with all my heart, that this will kill an industry, a $55 billion industry, small businesses, 100, 200,000 small businesses across the country, first responder fleets across the country, American citizens that rely on the safety of those drones that are flown by first responder fleets. That's all the stuff that's in jeopardy because those in Congress are either listening to the wrong people, refuse to listen to the right people. One particular representative, I won't mention names, but she has flat out said she will not talk to anybody who supports a Chinese company in this particular instance. And that's pure ignorance. That is cutting your nose off to spite your face. Listen to both sides. We're not asking, as an industry, we're not asking for the right to fly our drones wherever we want, no matter where they're made. We understand that's silly. We don't want that. What I want someone who is brave enough to stand up to basically the conservative leadership. And I'm a conservative. I'm a very conservative person politically. And so I feel personally attacked by my own party, but that's beside the point. I want somebody who is a conservative, who is a moderate, federate, perfect. But they need to stand up to the conservative leadership and say, look, we need to add some common sense. We need to inject, just like with a syringe, we need to inject some common sense and logic into this discussion because right now it's all scare tactics. It's politics, it's nonsensical arguments, it's flat out lies that are driving this thing right now. There have been people in DC, I won't mention who they told, but they said that this audit, this dead man's break in the audit, the December 23rd deadline, is completely unfair, but they cannot do anything for a Chinese company right now because it's political suicide. And that's not how we're supposed to work as a country. And don't look at it as doing something for a Chinese company. Look at it as doing something for the 100,000, 200,000, 250,000, 300,000 small American companies, small businesses, like I mentioned, backbone of the United States. And I'm rambling at this point, so I apologize. I get a little passionate about this. But really, seriously, our industry needs you to reach out to the Senate and the House Armed Services Committee. We need you to reach out to the conference committee, which is probably going to be the Commerce Committee, or the people who are putting this conference or the compromise together for the final bill. And again, all that stuff will be down below. I apologize for going off the rails on this. I do get passionate about this. I'm still cautiously optimistic that this will happen, that we'll be able to save our industry. But all we need are some legislators who are willing to stand up to the party leadership that is trying to destroy our industry. There's no easy way. We cannot sugarcoat this. They are going to destroy an industry if we don't get the extension on the deadline. And if the audits aren't performed, we want the audits to be performed, right? DJI has said, we want Adam Welch is on record as saying we want these audits done. And so we need to get these audits done, but we need an extension. There's no way it can happen now. It took a while to get these agency heads confirmed. Then we had the shutdown. And honestly, and this is just Vic talking, no inside information, no nothing, but I honestly think that an agency head is afraid to do this audit, because then they're going to have to present the findings to Congress, and they're going to have to tell Congress, y'all are wrong. Y'all don't know what you're talking about. This is all political. And when it comes to appropriation time, the people in charge of those appropriations may not look kindly upon being told they're wrong. And that's just, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, honestly, but that's kind of what I think is going on right now. It would not surprise me if that was going on. Let me put it that way. So again, let's rally. Let's reach out to these committees, and let's get this extension done. If they want to see security protocols on their drones as part of this extension, that's fine. But they've got to be tied to Section 2209. They've got to be sundowned. We can't just have this never-ending need for security, especially when, I believe, these drones are found to be perfectly safe and secure to fly, where appropriate. Again, we're not asking for the sky. We're asking for a vast majority of it, and we're asking for legitimate concerns to be addressed, not political scare tactics. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I appreciate you letting me talk your ear off about this. I will have all that information below, and we just need to make sure that we save our industry. Honestly, we're at that point now where if things don't change, if we don't get this done, our industry is dead in the water. We're done. And then let's say Skydio or Brink or somebody else who comes along creates a successful drone for the masses, they're going to have to rebuild this industry from the ground up. And so who's going to want to do that? DJI built this industry. Autel came along and helped build this industry. And then we as an American companies jumped on the industry and said, hey, great opportunity. And it is for the right American company to come along and say, hey, I can put out a product that is comparable, more expensive, obviously, than Chinese products. But that's also going to spur the Chinese to innovate as well. So competition spurs innovation, whether it's from China to America, America to China, wherever. It's always good. Competition is always good for innovation. So that's where we stand. One more final note, I will say that it's not necessarily a funding issue. It's part of it for American companies, absolutely. China subsidizes their companies. America subsidizes ours, for that matter, as well. But if you look at two companies, you look at Teledyne with their Cirrus, they pulled production because they couldn't compete. And if you look at Sony, of all companies, with their AirPeak, they pulled production because they couldn't compete with China. So if you're an American company and you want to compete with the Chinese, do it. Do it. But don't legislate, innovate. That's all we want. Don't legislate, innovate. And if you're a legislator, if you're a bureaucrat, if you're somebody who has the ear of one of those people, tell them all we're asking for is some logic and common sense. Get the audit done. Give us an extension. Give the companies who are audited a chance to address those issues that are found, because they will be found. That's the whole point of an audit, is to find these issues. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice now. That's all we want. So please reach out. to those I've mentioned. And if you see this as a legislator or as a bureaucrat, reach out to those who can make a difference and say, look, let's just step back a little bit and let's look at this without the political eye, without the, okay, let's look at it with logic and common sense. That's where I'm going to go. That's where I'm done. I promise. Thank you much. And if you have any questions, drop them below, vic@dspalliance.org. You can reach out to me. Do you have any comments? Please drop them below, kindly, professionally, and we'll go from there. So thank you much. And as always, as a drone pilot, I always end my stuff, fly safe, and as Greg says, don't be that guy. Thanks again, and have a great, great day.